চরণে আনন্দ লোকে মঙ্গলালোকে বিরাজ সত্য সুন্দর।
With folded hands and my deepest reverence, I welcome everybody joining this session from North America, Asia, and Europe. It is indeed a pleasure and a distinct honor to host this panel of distinguished thought leaders on a highly relevant and significant topic, drawing inspiration from within. The Boston Pledge, in its commitment to inspire the spirit of Renaissance within the global civilization, has organized this session to explore the lives of two giant personalities as we celebrate the 150th and 160th birth anniversary years of Rishi Aurobindo and Swami Vivekananda, respectively. Today, this panel of thought leaders will explore how we must draw inspiration from the lives of such great personalities to activate our inner conscience, to unleash our courage, influence our microcosms towards an enlightened civilization. We have 8 speakers to enrich today's session, drawing inspiration from Swami Vivekananda's 1893 Chicago speech, where Swamiji encapsulated the vastness of 7,000 years of Indian civilization in approximately 2 minutes 38 seconds. I would humbly request the speakers to maintain the sanctity of time frame. We will begin this session with Pujya Swami Sarvottamananda ji, followed by Dr. Joy Sen, Dr. Madhumita Datta, Nilesh Marik, Puran Dung, and then Dr. Partho Ghosh, chairman of the Boston Pledge, will present the synthesis of this session, which will be followed by Q&A session, where I will introduce Sumit Agarwal to you all, a real example of drawing inspiration from within. Now, respectfully, may I request Swami Sarvottamananda ji, Vice Chancellor, Ramakrishna Mission Vivekananda Educational and Research Institute, a deemed university, who enlightened us with his thoughts for the next 8 to 10 minutes. Over to you, Swamiji.
Namaskar, everyone. Namashri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukhat Swarupaya Swami Netapaharine. So I have given 10 minutes to talk about life and works of Swami Vivekananda and Rishi Aurobindo, but I will keep myself confined with only Swami Vivekananda. First of all, how do we look at the life, teachings, and work of Swami Vivekananda? So I will give you my personal opinion. See, as a monk, we are not so much interested in the teachings and principles of Vedanta that Swamiji spoke. We are actually more interested in his life. So because you see, the other things we have got other sources also. For example, principles and teachings, we have got other people, and we have got scriptures. Upanishads are there, where we get the principles of Vedanta. But what we lack there is the real life inspiration, which we get from the monks, from Swami Vivekananda, the avatars, and the living example of Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, and so on, naturally. To understand the purpose of what they have done, of what their teachings mean, we have to understand the purpose of life. So these are two very much connected. We just cannot analyze their works, teachings, etc. Independently. Because you see, we have to understand that both Sri Ram Krishna and Swami Vivekananda, and even Holy Mother also, they are returners. Like, for example, they have merged with the Brahman, or they have got liberation, whatever you talk, whatever you can say, and they have returned back. So their perception about the things of this world is very much different from what we have. So we may think like in the terms of like politics, economics, the development of the society, development of the world, or increase of the knowledge. But their perspective of what are the real things that we have to achieve in this world, which is actually the spirituality, their vision of spirituality. Because of that, they have very different perspective of what they have to achieve. And that is what make them different. Otherwise, you see, look at the life of Swamiji, or look at even the life of Sri Ram Krishna. They have got a relatively humble background. Except Swamiji might have, you might think that he came from elite background. But other than the father of Swami Vivekananda, you will see that all of his relatives, they had somewhat modest background. If you look at them, other than the spirituality, you will see that they are very normal. In fact, the spiritual giants who are born in modern times, the very unique thing about them is they have to have this humble and normal background. Because you see, the avatar, the one of the purpose is dharma sansthapanarthaya. For dharma sansthapanarthaya, that is to establish the spirituality, you have to have a normal background. Because if you have abnormal background, then people will say, no, they have this power, they have got this Shadashwarya, and because of that, they can do the sadhanas, and their teachings are not applicable to us. To make their teachings applicable to us, they have to have very normal background. And if we miss this fact, then actually will not be able to understand what their life and what their teachings mean. So I say that I have got only very short time to explain this, but I say this is a very important point. We cannot look at Swamiji's life, Sri Ramakrishna's life, or even Sri Aurobindo's life devoid of the spirituality. So their nationalism, their global idealism, or their love for love for humanity, doing good for poor, everything has to do with spirituality. When I say that this is the perspective of avatar, because they are eternal, they don't have this small time goals. They look for this long time. What is the long time aim, long time objective of this world? That is the liberation, cessation of the punarjanma cycle. Whatever you may think about it, because different people have different ideas of what the goal of life should be. But whatever goals, because these are, even if you have got shifting goals, like temporary goals, that is fine. Because what we want is the journey. If you are walking towards the aim, sometime you will get it, even if your idea about the aim is not correct. The important thing is walking on the road. So if you travel on the road, some point or another, you will get to the goal. So that is why this walking, whatever the aim is, that we don't put much importance in understanding the goal. Main thing is walking. And if we understand this, then we understand the life of Sri Ramakrishna, Swamiji, and other spiritual people. Only thing we have to remember that their life should not be thought of independent of spirituality. With this, I will finish my brief introduction to the topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Swamiji. Now, may I request Dr. Joy Sen, Chairperson, COE, Indian Knowledge System, Ministry of Education, Government of India, to speak for next 7 to 10 minutes. Over to you, Dr. Sen.
Yeah, thank you so much. Namaskar, pranam to everyone. I hope I'm just sharing a very short 7-slide PowerPoint. I hope it's visible.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. First, I would say how simple, how lucid, and how down to earth was this talk by Swamiji Maharaj, And I'll just speak from the words that he has said. He has mentioned 2 or 3 very important words, returners. These supreme souls, they have returned from the other side, They have come from the other side of infinity on this side of infinity, from the infinite space to the finite space, from the immeasurable to the measurable, from the very clean, absolute, to the place which is filled up with dust, muck, and all the problems of the world. So this is something which is very important for us to understand. And as Maharaj said, all that they did and all that they said, when they had returned from that side, they had brought down that complexity of that supreme realization to the most simplest of expression on this side of infinity, at our side. That is where Swamiji, Sri Aurobindo, and others are supreme. Sri Aurobindo talks about Swamiji. He says that the going forth of Vivekananda to the West, marked out in the mold in the hands of the master, Sri Ramakrishna, was the first visible sign to the world that India was again awake, just not to survive, but to show to the world that the spiritual solution that India is going to provide is the salvation of the future. So I have about 3, 4, 5, 6 quick slides to explain. So what we are doing today is to trace this enormous journey of the 2 great persons. And today, incidentally, is the date, the birth date of Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore. So the 3 personalities are coming in as one, 3 as 1, 1 as 3. So what you see here quickly is a very quick journey. Swamiji reaching Vancouver with Sir Jamshedji Tata, 1893. He is exchanging ideas with Nikola Tesla after the Parliament of Religions in Chicago. On the way back, meeting Max Muller, and that triggers the beginning of Indian knowledge systems in the West. And Heisenberg comes to Kolkata in 1929 to meet Tagore to discuss about the future of quantum physics. The next year, Einstein invites Tagore, 1930, to have another discussion on the role of consciousness in science. And finally, in 1951, Dr. Haridas Chaudhuri takes a copy of the Life Divine to the West. And the daughter of President Woodrow Wilson, Margaret Wilson, and others, invites Dr. Haridas Chaudhuri and the whole idea of Sri Aurobindo to settle. And that triggers the American Institute of Studies, the Californian Institute of Studies, and finally the Esalen Institute, which houses some of the greatest personalities like Arnold Toynbee, Alan Watts, and Abraham Maslow. So this is a huge explosion, which Dr. Partho Ghosh and many others always talks about. But this is only a tip of the iceberg. And this is actually a beginning of the Indian knowledge system. And this is exactly what we are trying to look at IIT Kharagpur. What is so important about this? And that takes us to the third personality who stands between Swamiji and Sri Aurobindo, which is Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore. His songs were sung by Swamiji till the last days he passed away. And Sri Aurobindo and Rabindranath had an intimate relationship. So what you see here in this slide is the crisis in civilization. Shobhotar Shankot, crisis in civilization. Today, the whole world is reeling with economic crisis, geopolitical crisis, climatic crisis, and socio-cultural crisis. Everyone knows this. I mean, I think I'm addressing a very enlightened house here, so I did not elaborate. The world is suffering from the perils, the shortcomings, the drawbacks of not so good science, what we call reductionist science. I produce my car, but I don't care about the pollution. I don't care about the parking problem which is there in my neighborhood. So I'm just reduced to an intent of producing the car using certain laws of science and technology. My production of car is not holistic. It could be a particular science, but it's not practical. If I say it in Swamiji's language, it is Vedanta, but it's not practical Vedanta. It is science, but it's not practical science. So what Swamiji says from the other side is also reflected from this side. This is beautiful. I mean, brilliance of Swami Vivekananda. So I don't want to discuss much about these people. They have contributed enormously to global civilization. But the kind of scientific paradigm that they have contributed in the last 200 years have reduced our thought processes, our engineering and scientific pedagogy to something which is a Cartesian, reductionist, what we call the Descartesian, Newtonian, Darwinian, Freudian, Marxist model of development. And this is something which has helped the world to an extent, but it has actually pushed the world towards disaster. So someone like Carolyn Stephen, a great historian of science from the University of Berkeley, says, even today, that needs to be reevaluated. So that takes us to Maslow, Abraham Maslow, which is, I think, a very important paradigm that we need to see. And in Maslow, we see the huge journey where we cannot just remain at this side of the infinity, and where we have to understand the levels of safety, and then we have to move to love and belonging, and then know the esteem, and then actualize ourselves, where the individual self is the self of the universe. Mamatma sarva bhutatma. Myself is the self of the universe. So if I hate another religion, if I hate another country, if I hate another domain of knowledge, I actually indirectly hate myself. And this is the beautiful paradigm which Swamiji was explaining. And this was grafted out from the two important discussions which were happened between Swamiji and Nikola Tesla, which you see on the top right of the slide. You start with the material level of the interaction between prana and akasha. It's very hard to explain within 8 minutes. And finally, you step up, and you reach that highest level where the two becomes one and the absolute is realized. And this is exactly which was explained by Sri Aurobindo in his Hour of God, which is known as the hierarchy of minds. And Maslow converted that to the hierarchy of needs, which finds a place in all the booths of planning, economics, management, leadership all around the world. This is absolutely splendid. We are in the mid of a global revolution, and this is where Indian knowledge system is striking back, not just to win with materialism, but to love and embrace everything with spirituality. So when you look at this slide, you can see the very important thing, that the movement, which was reductionist, which is a linear movement, is actually a projection of a cyclic movement. The whole concept of a God above that you see in this pyramid, if you go to the Vindu on the top, it is as if you're stepping up to an idea of a God above. But if you project that to a geometrical drawing, it is the concept of the God within. It is the knowledge of love within. So the journey is not from outside to inside. The journey is actually from inside to outside. That is the message of India to the world. That is the message of Swamiji in terms of practical Vedanta. That is the message of Sri Aurobindo in terms of the supramental strike. So this concept of the returner, which Swamiji beautifully and more simply said than me, is a supramental, that these are the people who didn't go on the other side of the infinity and remain there, but they came back. Sri Ramakrishna's Bhashai, Ishwar Koti, they're coming down the ladder in the reverse fashion. And this is today's science of involution and evolution. Shambhuti and Ashambhuti. Each evolution is preceded by an involution. If you look at the writings of Swamiji, cosmology, macrocosm, microcosm, and his treatise on the Sankhya and the Vedanta, and if you look at the explanations of Sri Aurobindo on the Isha Upanishad, Life Divine, and all the compositions of Savitri and others, you'll be surprised to see an absolute equivalence between the two giants. The student of today who is going to be a teacher of tomorrow is actually inspired by a teacher of yesterday, a student of yesterday who is actually the teacher of today. So that means the teacher of yesterday is inspiring the student of tomorrow. The retarded wave of a preceding teacher is actually helping the advanced wave of the student of tomorrow. This is precisely the concept which is shaping up the latest in science today, which is quantum transaction, quantum physics, quantum biology, the 2022 Nobel Prize in Physics, and the 2017 Nobel Prize in Physiology, which is on the circadian rhythm, the nonlinear dynamics. It's not a question of the East versus the West. It is actually the beautiful platform of the best of the East and the best of the West. So what the East has been garnering at the bottom of their heart for thousands of years, the Western science in a reverse fashion is discovering that bit by bit. So what the sages had discovered in the internal laboratory of mind and yoga, the scientists are discovering that slowly in their external laboratory of machines and algorithm. So a great time is about to be reached, which has been started by these great giants. And this is the need of the hour. Today is a beautiful day, the day of number 7, a very special day for Parthoda, Dr. Partho Ghosh. And the number 7 is the descent of the Saptarshis, the 7 sages, which is the whole life of Swami Vivekananda. And the number 7 is the central number of the secret of the Vedas, the Ved Rahasya, where from line 1 to the last line of the book, Sri Aurobindo again and again explains the psychosomatic tradition of the 7 sages and how that needs to be recovered in today's science. So in other words, these two giants are the best of friends in our household, and their work is shining in every nook and corner of whether you call it spirituality or whether you call it science. This is a beautiful dialogue which Swamiji realized at Kumayun in 1890. I have no time to read that. I'm just ending my presentation with this beautiful saying of the father of modern science, one of the godsons of Swami Vivekananda, Acharya Jagadish Chandra Bose, one of the fathers of Indian science and spirituality, one of the best friends of Sri Aurobindo and especially Sister Nivedita, and the man who stood in between science and spirituality. And two of his greatest disciples like Devendra Mohan Bose and Shatyendranath Bose shaped the future of science. He asked a question to Ganga while he had gone to the Himalayas, and there you find Swamiji and Sri Aurobindo. He asked, "O Ganga, where are you coming from, though you are making a journey to the ocean?" The Ganga, the mother of civilization, beautifully replied, "From the hair locks of the great God of eternal time. Nodi tumi kotha hote ascho, Nodi bolche ami Mahadever jota hote ascho." What does it mean? It means that though the river is making a journey from the mountains to the ocean, but it has not forgotten the river's memory of its origin, from where it's come from. So the involution or the descent of the Ganga from the mountain to the ocean is also the tracing of the origin, which is the evolution. So if you look at the two symbols of Sri Aurobindo and Swami Vivekananda, which they left for us to think, ponder, and shape our lives. On the left, you can see the ascending and the descending triangle. And on the right, you can see the serpent eating its own tail, which was also seen by the organic chemistry father, Kekule, in his dream. It is talking about the connection between this side of the infinity with that side of the infinity, and that side of the infinity with this side of the infinity. And this is precisely the 2022 Nobel Prize in Physics, from Heisenberg to John Wheeler and Richard Feynman, and from John Wheeler, Richard Feynman to Alan Aspect and his team. So the great victory of the Western sciences is actually the great victory of Indian spirituality, the science of being and becoming. And that is where these two best friends of humanity, just not giants, the best friends of science and spirituality, have descended right into our heart of hearts. I like to end with a quotation whom I really respect, one of the greatest scientists ever born in the history of humankind, Sir Werner Heisenberg, who came all the way from Germany to Kolkata in 1929 to discuss with Tagore on a song, Shimar Maje Ashim Tumi, within the finite, how is the infinite embedded? And Tagore explained for the whole day in his house. He invited Heisenberg. And Tagore was simply explaining Swamiji. Tagore was simply explaining Sri Aurobindo. And Heisenberg was so surprised. And he said, poet, the kind of things which I cannot explain through my maths and analytics, how could you write that through your poetry so simply, so simply? Tomar ashime monopran loye joto dur ami jai, amar hiyar maji lukiye chile. In my heart of hearts, you are there, but I have always looked outside. Bahir pane cheyechilam, bhitor pane chahini. So the journey of science could be from outside to inside, but India says it has to be reversed also from inside to outside. Today, a time has come in the history of humankind when these two different lines of thought, the involution and the evolution, are crossing each other. And this is a beautiful time. And we are just beginning to understand. We are just beginning to comprehend. And we are just beginning to feel what Swami Vivekananda, Sri Aurobindo, and Gurudev Rabindranath, and many other sages of India has left for us. Namaskar. Thank you.
Namaskar. Thank you very much, Dr. Sen. And now we have Dr. Madhumita Datta, author, speaker on Sri Aurobindo's The Future Poetry. And Dr. Datta will speak for about 8 to 10 minutes on Rishi Aurobindo. Over to you, Dr. Datta.
Namaste. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to talk about Rishi Aurobindo, as you know, the title says, but I'm just going to talk about the man. Okay. We have heard so much. It's beautiful presentation, the other two ones. So when we talk of Sri Aurobindo, the first and perhaps fixed image, comes to mind, and that is of the Rishi. Okay, the ancient figure of a lonely being practicing yoga in a lonely corner of the world. But that is only a part of the story. For he was not born a Rishi, but certainly destined to become one. And how he became a Rishi, for that, to know that, we must trace the journey of Aurobindo Ackroyd Ghosh. That was the name his parents had given him. So Aurobindo Ackroyd Ghosh to Sri Aurobindo, which was not without the troubles and travails and difficulties and obstacles, all that go into the making of a yogi. So Aurobindo Ghosh, from a very early age, had many enemies to counter and conquer at multiple levels, starting at the most material and reaching the most subtle of realms. And at every encounter, his spirit rebelled and sharpened his determination to fight the opposing forces, which entailed immense struggle, deadly battles, and colossal sacrifice. Ultimately sacrificed his mortal frame also. We know that. But what was so unique about this yogi struggle, especially when we talk about the subtler realms of being, the subtler realms of the universe. Now, as we know, transformation is the root word over here. So he's saying he not only conquered his enemies, but effected a transformation. And each successive victory was an assimilation, a change, a gathering of all into the next higher level. Because once it's not that you just suppress your enemies, they will come back. And the more powerful the evil is, it will affect its own epic transformation every time. So you have to change that, you have to remodel that, and then only your conquest is complete. So for the final aim, or the core of his yogic philosophy, was transformation, a radical transformation, he meant, of all parts of the being, down to the cellular level. And at the collective side, he aimed at the spiritual emancipation of the human race, defined by his prophetic vision of a world unity in the true sense, and of course, a divine life for man. So let's begin where Aurobindo Ghosh had begun, with the anti-colonial agenda, when he plunged deeply into Indian politics, took active part in the freedom movements, and strangely, that was the starting point of his yoga. So many times we tend to miss this fact. We think he was the yogi who was doing politics, but it's the other way around actually. So he was in his youth, in his very early years, 21 years of age when he came back from England. So he was so actively involved, his patriotism fanned and inspired by his dream of free India, that he earned himself the title of the most dangerous man in India. That was, something the British government gave him this title, and also the undisputed leader of Bengal revolutionaries. So revolutionary he certainly was. In all his works, his activities, his writings, his prophecies, he was always the revolutionary. So what did the young nationalist politician Aurobindo Ghosh do? Through his fiery and vibrant journalistic writings and speeches, he aroused the latent warrior spirit of a nation of people who had actually fallen into a tamasic state. We plashed into action those in the grip of inertia, condemned the atrocities of the colonizers, and also the mendicant Indian politicians and their policies without any pretense. For these, at that age, were verily his enemies, British imperialism and the sloth and inertia of his own countrymen. And so what did he preach? He preached Shakti, the divine power which is within. And that awakening of the divine power, that was his first teachings, I feel. So he said, holiness of the saint alone won't do. That's not enough, but that must be complemented by the sword of the warrior. He said, fight when you have to. And he never preached unjustified non-violence. It's not there in our philosophy at all, because enemies have to be fought in the Kurukshetra of life. So beginning thus with his political enemies, what were his other enemies? Through the evil powers that were unleashed during the two massive world wars, and he was a witness to both. The rigid materialism, the inconscient, the ignorance and disease and evil of all kinds. This yogi's battle continued all through till he could conquer the last enemy, death, and bring down the supramental force on earth. So he had rooted himself in the spiritual culture of India. He had drawn from the Vedantic universal humanism, that philosophy, but he was a visionary, and so Sri Aurobindo went beyond the past into the future, infinite future, beyond mere revivalism, to address the contemporary and eternal existential issues, beyond mere nationalist politics to internationalism, international relations between national units of the future, beyond narrow religionism to a global spiritualization beyond India and Asia, to a synthesis of the East and the West, in his own words, to pursue the highest ideals in life. Now, it's a very short time to actually, enumerate all the different roles that he played in his life. That is, he was, a teacher, educator, editor, journalist, poet, and I mean, all these together. But it should suffice to say in this short time that basically, if we have to underline what Sri Aurobindo was, what he stands for today, we can say that he was a rishi, he was a seer poet, not only a poet, but a seer poet, a revolutionary, a futurist, at the avatar, the one without boundaries and borders, because he was prompted always by the universal and the impersonal. For instance, you see, even when he was fighting for the freedom of India, we see insistent from behind his vision of a larger freedom. He wanted India to be free because he said, without political freedom, we cannot go further. So the resurgence of India as a spiritual power to redeem mankind, that was his vision. And Sri Aurobindo worked for the redemption of mankind all through. That is why we say he is the Rishi. Okay, his was a philosophy of integralism. In a nutshell, if I have to say, he was a philosopher of integralism, synthesizing the best in knowledge, skill, and power. He did not reject the West. Okay, he assimilated that. He rejected the atrocities of British imperialism. He did not reject English. He did not reject the West. So, built his ideal of human unity by removing the internal obstacles of unity, the causes of hatred, malice, and misunderstandings. I suppose these words, in Sri Aurobindo's words, are very important. They may sound very simple, but if we look at our lives today, the causes are all within, and the power to fight also is within. So, and he emphatically claimed that the most important thing was the removal of ego. And he's not only saying ego at the individual level, but as we have individual egos, we also have our collective egos, we also have our racial egos, we also have our national egos. So the removal of egoism at all these levels will lead to peace and harmony in man and his world. So even there's no time to talk about all his works. They make up great volumes, but I would like to especially mention 2 or 3 which have a distinctly futuristic note. That is the Ideal of Human Unity, the Future Poetry, the Life Divine, and of course his epic Savitri. Somebody said these are spiritual dynamites. Of course, they are absolutely revolutionary. And it's not just the internet revolution that we have today, or not even the revolutions in science and technology. Yes, they help us a lot, but they are only to provide remedies or outer remedies for life. But Sri Aurobindo has provided us a lasting, radical solution to the problems of life. And I suppose the dynamite is waiting to, explode and annihilate, but to create anew the world on steadier, secured, and spiritual foundations. And for this, I suppose we must set the clock to hasten the process of evolution. For Sri Aurobindo's philosophy is all about evolution and transformation. So these are, I think, the 2 key words whenever we talk about Sri Aurobindo or his philosophy. So I think that's about all for today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Datta, for your wonderful and insightful sharings. I could pick up 2 words, integral yoga. And this is how we have got an opportunity to form a chain. The next speaker, Nilesh Manik, an international coach on integral yoga practices, would now take the baton forward. Over to you, Nilesh.
Namaste. Namaskar. to just build on what Datta said. In the time we have, I'll just try to provide a perspective on Sri Aurobindo, building on what she has said. India's resplendent heritage over thousands of years comprises of various epochs of spiritual synthesis, of expanding existential truth visions and their corresponding assimilations into the evolving human experience, right? Sri Aurobindo's work, which is called the Integral Yoga, we just heard, represents the culminating synthesis that brings together the wide and varied gamut of spiritual experiences in the whole of human history, both in the East and the West, to a kind of a grand finale. And it's a grand finale because of three things. First, it is the most penetrative and comprehensive understanding of both the mechanics of creation and the complex riddle of existence. Second, it is a complete resolution of that riddle in the occult domains of causal determination. What she mentioned, what we heard about as subtle realms. And third, it is also a definitive pathway for the delivery or the deliverance of the divine promise of heaven on earth in the direct, incontrovertible experience of the spiritual aspirant or yogin. By heaven on earth, we mean not a physical location away from here, but a state of consciousness and its outer expression achievable right here. And this is a departure from the otherworldly spirituality that we have seen all over the world. The integral yoga is integral in many ways. In the aim and object of its vision, in the totality of its effectuation, in the width and range of its applicability to the full diversity of the human nature on earth, and in the consummate fulfillment of all the faculties available and required by the human being for his communion and commerce with the entirety of the cosmos. So, the integral yoga can be understood as both the spiritual science and the spiritual technology which mankind has received as his greatest gift to date, because it allows him to scale the highest summits to the unplumbed depths of spiritual experience, bring that delight and freedom into his work in the world, and share its fruits with everyone else, who he, by the way, now sees as his own self in different forms, complementary permutations of quality and agency of purpose. And all this possibly in one lifetime, which would have otherwise taken a few thousand years. That is the power and the dynamite potential of the integral yoga. The harnessing of the spiritual technology requires a commitment to a very concentrated psychological process of self-discipline or sadhana, in an orientation of unconditional self-consecration to the greatest power that has been brought to bear for the sadhaka's care and handholding, the Divine Mother or the Adya Shakti herself. Sri Aurobindo's yoga is not just a teaching, but a decisive, active, and living power that makes this journey possible for man for the first time in the history of the universe. And we could say that it occurs in three stages broadly. Very briefly, the first stage of the journey is the discovery of his soul, which is his inmost being, the true center of his individuality, which has a direct hotline with the higher planes of consciousness, and which is also the vehicle and nodus of his spiritual evolution within and across lives. In the second stage, his ascent to the higher planes is accompanied by a corresponding descent of spiritual power and light that begins a thorough transmutation of all parts of his whole being and their remolding in the divine image of perfection. In the third and final stage, in which the yoga is no longer only personal, but also collective, because of the intimate correspondence, constitutive correspondence of the individual microcosm with the universal macrocosm. There becomes possible a full divine suffusion in and of terrestrial nature, and the native and unveiled working of the supreme truth consciousness in our material reality. As mentioned earlier, this work has already been done in the supraphysical causal domains in the last 100 years or so, but will require some time to fully work itself out and be outwardly and physically visible to us in our lives. Those who are called to this unparalleled and unprecedented adventure can launch their conscious participation here and now. Sri Aurobindo, along with the mother, who is his partner and spiritual collaborator in this seminal cosmic enterprise, have made the integral yoga toolkit fully available to us, should we choose to use it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nilesh. Thank you. That was really a journey of words, journey of emotions, a journey to different plane altogether. Thank you. So may I now request Mr. Pooran Dang, distinguished alumni, IIT Kharagpur and member of the Boston Pledge, to share his thoughts for the next 5 to 6 minutes.
Good morning, my dear friends, and greetings from Boston, Lexington, Massachusetts. After the very holistic and stimulating talks by the three great gurus, I humbly want to ask you a couple of questions, and they may be material or they may be my curiosity, but the first question is, Swami Vivekananda gave our Vedic heritage international recognition at the Chicago Assembly of Religions, and also established the Vedanta ashrams, Ramakrishna missions all over the world. May I know whether Ramakrishna missions are still in full force or declining? The voice of Swami Ranganathan, whom I met, still rings in my ears. Those were the beautiful words we were hearing all around the world. My wife Kamlesh and I visited Belur Mutt some 40 years ago and stood by the Swamiji's bed where he died by the river Hooghly. We can never forget. He died so young. What happened? Was it self-sought? My question, man of such purity, man of such control, and guru of yoga could not beat diabetes? This question comes to me again and again. The next question, Rishi Aurobindo had multiple lives. Studied at Cambridge in UK, the brilliant man, senior administrative jobs in India, many years in the struggle of freedom from the British, and then ashram in Pondicherry, where he reached the spiritual godly height. His spiritual writings, yoga, songs, plays, and whatnot inspired the whole world, and his message and his words will ring for centuries or forever. But my question is, it is material question. Why he fled to Pondicherry? Was he scared of the British? What was it? It is just my humble question. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dang. And before we take up these questions, or before may I request any of the speakers to take on these questions. We would like to hear a synthesis of the thoughts that has been presented by the speakers, by Dr. Partho Ghosh, the chairman of the Boston Pledge. May I request Dr. Ghosh to share his thoughts? Thank you.
Thank you, Devinder. With my deepest reverence to the ancient sages, the rishis who developed the knowledge strings of Upanishads and Vedas, and my deepest thanks to the previous speakers, Swamiji, Dr. Joy Sen, Dr. Datta, and Mr. Marek. I feel highly humbled to reflect on all the thoughts that you have shared and all the knowledge that we know of Swamiji, Aurobindo, Tagore, and all the different aspects that Dr. Joyson brought together from the people in the field of science, be it Heisenberg, Einstein, Jagadish Bose, to the field of philosophy, which was beautifully represented by Swamiji as well as Rishi Aurobindo, and many other thought leaders, philosophical thought leaders, philosophers of the Indian subcontinent. Between the Himalayas and the peninsula and the Indian Ocean, indeed, over the last 7,000 years, we have developed a deep understanding of what is the connection between God. To me, yoga is a connection, yoga, between divinity and our day-to-day lives. And in the process, as Swamiji beautifully pointed out, these two individuals whose 160th and 150th birthday years we are celebrating, they were normal people, just like you and me. They were born on the soils of Bengal in Calcutta, 7 miles away, 10 years apart. But their thoughts, their spirit, touch the universe, touch the people across the oceans, and touch the people, and that's why we are having the celebration. Now, I must say that they had a vision that we all celebrate, which is the role of India on the global stage. Tagore, some of the philosophers have written, Bharat abar jagat shabhay shreshto asana labe, which is India will once again take the most prestigious position in the Assembly of Nations. So these are the dreams, and at the same time, their ability to connect the past with the future, move on the time machine, as well as the ability to transcend through space, is what defines Swami Vivekananda and Aurobindo, as well as, I would say, a person like Tagore. Now, the question that I want to answer as building on what Puranji has raised, for ourselves, it is clear that the relevance of the teachings of Swamiji and Rishi Aurobindo are perhaps significantly more relevant today than when they were talking about it, because we are in a significantly more serious crisis that the world is facing, and I don't have to talk about it. Only yesterday in the United States, there was a mass shooting in Texas. 8 people were killed. And I was looking at the numbers that in the month of May only in the month of May this year, we are on May 7th, there was 9 mass shootings. There's a war going on in Sudan. There's a war going on in middle of Europe. There's a struggle in North and South Korea. There's a struggle in different parts of South America, struggles in Africa. And there was a mass shooting in Serbia, 2 of them back to back in Serbia. So I feel that we have not heard what these two great individuals have been trying to say, because they saw the crisis 100 years ago, and they talked about the future where India has a role to play, not because they were nationalistic in that sense. They believed the principles, the philosophies that developed in the foothills of Himalayas 7,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago. We do not know exact the time range, but their relevance to rescue the world to a higher level of awakening to a more enlightened state, which the civilization should move towards. Instead, Swamiji did not see, but Aurobindo faced two wars, the First World War and the Second World War. Swamiji saw the possibility, and that speech in 1893 on September 11th, he warned that we have to come together in the concept of universal religion. And that was the first effort by the world, thanks to some of the thought leaders in Boston and Chicago, that we wanted to talk about, to remove the friction between religions, but bring them together, as he beautifully described, multiple streams from the Himalayas meet on the ocean. So, unfortunately, the word heard, applauded. We talk about Vivekananda every day, and we must. We talk about Rishi every day, and we must. But the world has not changed. The world has moved from one crisis. World War I happened, World War II happened. Aurobindo witnessed that, Vivekananda did not. But the nexus between Aurobindo and Vivekananda was brilliant. When Rishi was in the jail in Calcutta, apparently he believed Swami Vivekananda's soul visited him, and he's awakening that you are more than the struggle for freedom. You have to free civilization of the current constraints by bringing Indian philosophy at the forefront of development. So I raise the question to myself and to all of us, as Swamiji today laid out beautifully at the beginning, the first talk that we had, that these individuals were normal people. How come we cannot cultivate in us the same spirit that we saw in Rishi Aurobindo and Swami Vivekananda? And since we launched the Academy of Leadership at the IIT Kharagpur, which is all about bringing Western philosophical thoughts with the Eastern philosophical thought, which is largely rooted in Vedic philosophy, but we do not reject Confucianism, we do not reject Shintoism, we do not reject Taoism, as well as the Emmanuel and the Western philosophy from Roman to the Greek, to the German, to the American philosophies like Henry Thoreau. I think time has come for each one of us to believe that we can become like Swami Vivekananda. I'm perhaps making a very strong statement, but why not? Because Swamiji himself used to believe in that. So I analyzed their life, and as I heard from each one of you, and all of you touched on it, and I drew 10 lessons. I cannot go in the details of 10 lessons, but I want to touch on them. Maybe during the Q&A, we should talk about it. The first, which is the most important one, I think, great leaders, be it thought leaders, spiritual leaders, social reformer, scientists, they go through discontinuities with elegance. When Aurobindo was born, his father wanted him to be a perfect Britisher. 7 years in Kolkata, then 14 years in England, between St. Paul's School and then King's College in Cambridge to become an ICS officer. He rejected that. He came to Baroda while teaching French and English. He was learning Sanskrit and Bengali and the Upanishads. His own mother tongue he was learning again. Then while doing that, he participated in nationalistic movement. And in fact, he was very critical about the movement. He said we were taking it too easy. He wanted to be more active, yet he had a term called passive resistance. Actively passive resistant. Part of that was the spirit of Mahatma Gandhi, part of it was the spirit of Netaji. And he created a synthesis of the two, which he called active passive resistance. And that was brilliant. And he became, as Mrs. Datta talked about, considered to be the most dangerous man in India who can uproot the British from the subcontinent. Now, during the jail time, as he was jailed, he woke up and saw. So these are the discontinuities they go through. He used the time in the jail, not lamenting, but to meditate. He used the time in Baroda, not to just earn money or not to to teach French and English. He learned Sanskrit. So I think same thing we have seen in Swamiji's case. If you look at schooling in Kolkata, he was exposed to both Eastern and Western philosophy in Scottish Church College. He used to be very fond of Western philosophy while he came in contact with Ramakrishna. Then he wandered around India. That's the next test curve. Then not invited, but he said, I will go to Chicago, the next test curve. Then somehow he made the effort to find 3 minutes to, as Devendra saying, 2 minutes, 58 seconds and use every second, every nanosecond to bring Indian philosophy on the global stage. And then again, the next test curve, he established Belur Math, Ramakrishna Mission, and Vedanta Center all over the world. All happened in a very short period of 41 years. So the first lesson to learn for us that we must embrace each and every moment and look for discontinuities. It cannot be linear line, it has to be discontinuous, and deal with the discontinuity with elegance. Second, I think we do not do, but Indian philosophy has continuously taught us. I have learned in my school in Calcutta. I was very lucky to go to a school where Sanskrit was taught on one side, on the other side, English philosophical thoughts were taught by the people from Oxford and Cambridge. And they merged in my mind. And what I learned, that we should learn how to listen to our own voice. These two gentlemen did respond to the inner call. The third, we have to have, and we have to cultivate that, and that's one other thing we are trying to do at IIT Kharagpur, and I know Ramakrishna Mission does that extremely well, is the continuous spirit of inquiry, questioning, what is the next thing, and continuous spirit of learning. I think that is what I take from what I've learned today from Swamiji and Aurobindo's life. Then comes the fifth point, which is the honor your time. The point I made, Swamiji was not invited, but when he was given the 2 hour 58 seconds earlier, when he visited Harvard Divinity School to get the permission to speak, Miss Dean Wright spent 30 minutes with him, and he wrote back every minute that his name was Narendra Datta spent here. It was very elevating, as his knowledge is more than all the professors at Harvard put together. At that time, he was only 30. So honoring time and honoring your inner conscience, I think, is something that we have to learn. The other point that I picked up, the meditative effort. We talk about meditation, but in today's world of social media, we see people's span of attention is declining because they keep on surfing. When they talk, they're talking to someone at the same time they're looking at the cell phone. I think we have to bring that change, and that change can only come if we can help people to develop the meditative power and help to draw energy from within, which is ultimately the fundamental point which Dr. Joyson laid out beautifully, which is the power of Sanatan Dharma. Sanatan Dharma, eternal Dharma, eternal. I would not even use the word religion, eternal philosophy, which bonds all of us together. The eternal yoga or integral yoga. That is the meaning that I would like to say. Then the most important thing that we should take from the Swamiji and Aurobindo's life, they were in many ways opposite. Until the age of 20, Aurobindo was not exposed to the Eastern philosophy. In fact, his father wanted him not to be exposed. So he was sent to live in a British family, English clergyman, if I remember right. And in case of Vivekananda, it was just the opposite. He was exposed thanks to particularly his mother, who was very devout. He used to read Ramayana and Mahabharata to young Naren, and then he met Ramakrishna. So they had many ways opposite. In fact, when the year Vivekananda left for Chicago, in the same year, in the month of January, Aurobindo returned, only 10 years younger, to India. It's very interesting. Their paths didn't cross. They crossed in the soul, in the cell, the soul of Vivekananda connect with Vivekananda. But the point I want to make, the ability to synthesize multiple perspectives, both of them did. Aurobindo was exposed to the West for the first 20 years. He learned about the East, learned about the Indian philosophy, brought it together beautifully in 20 volumes of book. But particularly which stands out to my mind is the Life Divine and the Human Unity. I think volume 10 and volume 11. So that ability, I think we have to develop. We either say this is good or this is bad, but they never made the judgment. They said it's the synthesis that makes the difference. And synthesis is an art, and that is the art that Indian philosophy teaches. It never rejected any religion. It always accepted every way of thinking to bring it together. We have to practice that. And then the biggest point is they've never felt helpless. Even when they're struggling, when Vivekananda was in the station in Chicago living in a box, or when Aurobindo was in a cell, which was apparently very tight in, I think, Alipur or Bagbazar cell, I do not know which one he was, but definitely they did not lose the time. They spent the time to develop themselves. So that is very important. And finally, there are two final points. I think they had a tremendous sense of humility. They were always bowing down, and great people that I have met in my life, whether they're in Japan or United States, that humility comes from faith in God and commitment to fundamental principles. They're humble, but firm when it comes to principles. They do not look for titles. They do not look for their self-interest. They look for the interest of others. Jive prem kore jai jon shei jon shevichishwa. And each one of us could practice that. And the final point, they embrace adversity. Adversity has never made them uncomfortable. So the final point I would like to make, and that is a very deep point, and I think we need to understand what does it really mean to us. I think we must realize, if I look at India today, there are two very powerful forces. One is a force of that we are trying to imitate the West. We are trying to bring in the Western consumerism. We are trying to follow the Western model when the West is continuously questioning. And on the other side, in the last 10 years, I see a new awakening. We are talking about Indian philosophy. We are talking about how to revive the ancient principles which developed in the soils of India over the last 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 years. We are talking about it. That's what Dr. Joyson beautifully presented. That's the role of IKS. That's what we want to do in the Academy of Leadership. And that's what Ramakrishna Mission has been doing for the last, I would almost say, close to 80 to 100 years. But the challenge is, should we be able to raise India to be the India that Aurobindo and Vivekananda envisioned, which can create a model for the world which is different from what it is today? Or if we get consumed by the lower level instincts of Western consumerism or Cartesian model, which I call a zero-sum game, if someone has to lose, if I have to win, then I think we are giving up the opportunity that India has. So I think that's why we do this program in Boston Pledge. That's why we are doing the Academy of Leadership. That's why we want to work with all of you, particularly with Ramakrishna Mission, that it is a big challenge. It is no longer lectures. We have to cultivate in 1.4 billion people the spirit of Vivekananda and spirit of Aurobindo. And if we can do that well, that synthesis of 1.4 billion's life will become a model. Otherwise, we will have lectures, we'll have books, we'll talk about the possibilities of Indian philosophy. Indeed, there's a tremendous possibility, but life will go on. We'll get consumed by consumerism. We will consumed by reductionist point that you talk about. I talk about the zero-sum game versus plus-sum game. India is about plus-sum game. India is about synthesis. India is going deep into selflessness. And through that, we create an enlightened society. So I think we have an opportunity to create that enlightenment. We have to rise to the challenge and bring the spirit of Swamiji and Rishi and other leaders who really were selfless into the minds and hearts of the young people in our country. And that is, with that, I would like to again extend my prayers to the 2 points, the absolute and Brahma. We call prana and akasha. Then you talk about force and matter. They're all at work. They're all at work. And we have to make the yogic connection so that we can create a nation. And again, I'm not talking as an Indian, I'm talking as a global citizen. It is exactly what Rishi Aurobindo said and Vivekananda said, that Indian philosophy is for the world, not for India. And only when it is for the world, we can celebrate what India had to offer and India could offer in the next 5 years, next 50 years, next 100 years, next 500 years, we don't know. But we have to, because the world is in crisis and we cannot take it anymore. We have to really believe in what we have heard this morning in Boston, this evening in India, and hopefully we can create the new chapter of the next chapter, or the new chapter of the global civilization. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ghosh, for a profound and vivid synthesis. Your emotions were quite obvious, and these emotions binds us together. And I'm hopeful that together we will create a land, we'll create a world which the great people dreamt of. Now, before Shantanu and Raj take us through question and answer session, where the panelists would take on questions, starting with the one asked by Mr. Dang. Kindly allow me to introduce Sumit Agarwal, my younger brother, who is special in many ways. Diagnosed with rare physiological disorder, Sumit had multiple surgeries for survival ever since he was a child, but did not give up. He did justice to what he was gifted by the divine, instead of cribbing and complaining. Drawing inspiration from within, Sumit embraced the challenges with elegance. Today, Sumit is founder of PR Signal, a leading PR agency in the entire country, mentor of change, Niti Aayog. He is TEDx speaker, diversity, equality, and inclusive ambassador of Government of India, sustainable development goal ambassador of the United Nations. May I now request Sumit to share his thoughts for the next 2 to 3 minutes. Over to you, Sumit.
Dear esteemed panelists and ladies and gentlemen, I am somebody who is not supposed to be alive today. I faced 4 difficult surgeries, each one more difficult than the last. The doctor said he might not survive, but I struggled and I managed to survive. In my journey, I was rejected by 31 schools, multiple colleges, and people said, MBA is not for you. I not only did my MBA, but also topped my university with a 9.5 CGPA. 6 companies rejected me. They told me that, Sumit, you are a marketing guy. You cannot walk or stand. We will not accommodate you. And I started my own entrepreneurship journey. I said, I don't want to be a taker from the society. I want to be a giver to the society. I want to give jobs. Now I have clients all across the world from LinkedIn, and people are working with me. As a diversity and inclusion ambassador, I have given more than 250 speeches at various colleges and institutions across the world. Swamiji had said once that if somebody is struggling, it is our purpose to make them realize the truth and the higher purpose that they can attain, irrespective of their disabilities. I believe disability is in the mind, because Swamiji himself had 31 minor ailments, not just diabetes, but he had 31 minor ailments. But he kept on going and he spread his message to the world. Today, to listen to these great giants, I have been sitting here for last 3 hours. I have 103 fever. And I found this seminar so interesting. I was so driven by it that I chose to attend the whole seminar with my fever, even right now. So I believe inspiration comes from within. You have a power that you need to tap into, and your greater purpose is to help others. That is what I believe in. You can attain spirituality even by helping others. And that is the greatest form of giving in the planet. If you look at all of the saints, all of the great sages, one of the things that binds them is their nature to give freely. They offer their knowledge freely, they offer their guidance freely, they offer their talks freely, and now it exists through the medium of YouTube and technology. We can even hear the speeches, recorded speeches today also. It is there for us. It is at our fingertips. We don't know what a vast repository of knowledge we have. And I believe that with the support of everybody, not only me, but the 8 crore people with disabilities in India can also be empowered to hold their head high and live with dignity. Thank you so much for inviting me here, Devendraji. Thank you so much, esteemed panelists. I have been lucky enough to reach 100 million views on LinkedIn. 100 million people across the world have seen my views, and I'm happy to say they respond to it. And I believe that I can also create a better world, walking on the footsteps of giants before me.
Thank you, Sumit. Thank you very much. You inspire us. And I think this is the life that you are leading, which will be a true homage to the great people who want us to make this country, to make this world a better place. Thank you. Now, respectfully,
Devendra, one point. May I answer Dr. Puran Dang's question?
Sure, please go ahead.
And I would very much like Swamiji, Madhumita, and Nilesh to chime in. The first question was, Vivekananda passed very young age, and I think I felt Sumit answered it. Vivekananda had not had the time to think of his health. He had several ailments, but when he was asked by Sister Nivedita once, when he was sick, how's your health? He said, very good. And to be honest with you, he answered, I don't have time to think because I am in service of God. So I think, we all are brought to this world as a gift of God. I believe in that. We are all gifts of God. But some people are unfortunately very rare. They treasure the gift in service, as Sumit was talking about. And they do not think about their health as much as they should, perhaps, because they want to deliver. And he didn't have the time to think. So that's my first answer to your first question. Aurobindo got a calling in the jail, and I'm sure Nilesh and Dr. Datta would expand on it. But the calling was, you are much more than the independence of India. You are meant for the enlightenment of the world. And he had to go to a place which is not in the British Empire. Because in the British Empire, the Britishers were so worried, as Dr. Datta was talking about. He is the most dangerous freedom fighter because he knew everything about the British system, because that's what he studied for 20 years. And he qualified for an ICS position. So he knew. He had friends in England with whose support he could have drawn to fight the national movement, pretty much like Netaji. Netaji was, of course, a bit younger. Now, so he decided to move to a place where he will be free from the British torture. That's why Pondicherry has got a beautiful home in Kolkata, but that is, I think, in Theatre Road, right? If I'm right. I've seen the home, but he moved to Pondicherry. And fortunately, there he met Mother. Mother was a great supporter. A lot of resources came from France, as Belur resources came from people like Rockefeller, Andrew Carnegie, or Vivekananda. So these guys move around in this world with lot of confidence, yet humility to connect. So that's why my quick answer to your questions.
Thank you very
Yes,
much,
thank you.
Dr. Ghosh.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Partho. Four lines come to my mind, Devender. Lives of great men all remind us we can make our lives sublime, and while departing, leave behind us footprints on sands of time. The whole crux of this discussion, I think these four lines highlight. These two great people not only changed India, they changed the world. And if we follow them, I think, as our discussion pointed out, Partho Ghosh and others, that India has a great future. The message of spirituality, I think at this time we need that. These shootings going on in America and so many other bad things in the world. But these two people's guidance and message can create a new blissful world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dang. I think these great people were not just trying to liberate India, but they were with a higher purpose of liberating aching soul of humanity in the entire cosmos. So this is what my little understanding could grasp. Now, respectfully, over to Shantanu and Raj for the question and answer session. Thank you.
Thank you, Devender. And thank you everyone for the great speeches today. Thanks for all of you who have joined and formed our audience. I think you will take something out of it today. But before I take questions, I had two of my own questions to this esteemed panel. And maybe I'll start with Partho. So Partho, during your speech, you mentioned something that touched me, that great leaders go through discontinuities with elegance. So whether it's Vivekananda or Aurobindo or other great leaders, Subhash Chandra, I feel like all of them had to go through that transformation. And a lot of it is probably the transformation of the mind, or maybe in the Boston Pledge language, we call it the renaissance of the mind. So my question to you is, what triggers that change? And how can we trigger such changes among ourselves? Because we are all busy with our personal lives, with our jobs, other things, right? How could we experience such a renaissance within our mind to elevate ourselves to the next level?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think I'll give this question to Swamiji, because Swamiji you practice this every day, and that's what you are. And then I would perhaps build on it. Swamiji, maybe you could share your thoughts on this very, very, very good question.
So, if I understand, you are asking the question, what drives the desire for this change? So, in our spiritual life, we have seen not just yogis, many people who come to this life. So, why is it? Why is that so? You said that we are happy with our life, with our personal life, but Vedanta says that this happiness for our life will never be permanent. Why is that so? Because our real nature is not that. If our real nature was this body, we might be happy with this world. But because we are not this body, this unhappiness with this world has to come to every person. That is why you will know that Indians, Hindus are not in a hurry to convert others, because they know that in your future life, at some point you will come to this realization that this world is not going to give you happiness. So my answer is that this desire for change, it comes because of your unhappiness with your present situation, with your this world. As Mahatma Buddha said, "Dukkham dukkham sarvam dukkham." When you realize that this world is just misery, or in terms of Hinduism, they say that it is a mixture of misery and happiness, then you will be dissatisfied with this world, and the idea of mumuksha, or at least to stop this cycle of rebirth, will come to your mind. And one more thing, see, what is the biggest obstacle that we face? It is not our ignorance or, for example, our desires. You will be surprised to know the biggest obstacle in front of us is our disbelief that this is possible. So we simply don't believe that liberation is possible. So once we understand that this liberation is possible, it is possible to come out of this world, then we try for it. So all the great people that you have talked about, they have come to this realization. Like Sri Ram Krishna, he said, "Ki Ram Prasad hobe to amar hobe na keno." So this idea will come to you that others have attained this. Why cannot I attain this? Then you will try for this change of mind. So change of mind is just one of the methods. Knowledge, bhakti, and other things are also there, because we believe in harmony of paths. And even very simple things, just your character transformation, just being good also can lead to the good. So that is my answer.
Shantu, I may build on, and thank you very much, Swamiji, because you have really laid out I would say, the foundation of the likely answer that I would like to build on. I feel, in life, we move through one stage and soon we reach what I will call stage of maturity. When you see nothing is changing, you're just enjoying the past in the way you have been absorbed. And that's when I think it's important to raise the question, what might be the next S-curve? What is the next chapter that you want to open, which could be dramatically different? In some cases, it's imposed on you. That's happened with Shumit. It was imposed on him. Shumit dealt with it, and he created his own curve. Sometimes it may not be imposed on you, but it is for you to impose on yourself. That yes, for example, Sri Aurobindo could have been staying in England and enjoy his British and European lifestyle. But his desire to learn that I missed something, he felt I missed something, but he didn't know what he missed. His idea of Indian philosophy is mystical, is magical. It may not have any relevance. That's what he used to believe when he was 20 years old. But he had a questioning mind that I cannot make that judgment unless I know it myself. So he didn't read translations. There were a lot of books in Bengali, but he also didn't know much Bengali that time. He wanted to learn Vedas in his original language. He learned Sanskrit, studied the Vedas. So that desire we have to cultivate in ourselves, Shantanu. The desire that what is the next S-curve, however unknown it is, have the courage to connect with it. And I tell that to my clients in the corporate world. If you look at why companies die, big companies die because they become comfortable. It happened to Polaroid, happened to many companies, they become comfortable. So you have to always find the next S-curve of discomfort. I always say, find the next S-curve of discomfort, where you can connect your passion with that discomfort and make it comfortable. You go up again, and then you move to the next S-curve. And fortunately, both of them, Swamiji and Aurobindo, they both went through 5, as I mentioned earlier, discontinuities. Some cases, people go through 7 discontinuities. But discontinuity is a moment when you connect with your divine inside and ask God, how do I connect with the next S-curve, which I don't know, but I want to connect. And that spirit of yoga is connect. Yoga is a connection with the unknown, with the faith that unknown has some possibilities for you to know who you are, even better than what you know about yourself today. Because the universe within is infinite. Joyce, I'm using your term. The universe outside is infinite. And when we connect the within with outside, and make that effort, you go through the discontinuity with grace.
Thank you very much. So with that, I know time is limited. I'd like to offer the time to Raj to ask any questions as well as our audience. So Raj, can you please go ahead? Or if not, anybody else in the audience, if you have any question.
Let me see, anyone has raised any hand? I have a question for Swamiji, and also a question for Joyce. Actually, I have a question for 4 panelists, but let me go with one question. Obviously, we had a very rich discussion today. There's no doubt about it. Thanks to the questions, thanks to the comments you have made. My question, which is very deep, is that we have such discussions quite often. When I was young, I used to live in South Calcutta. I used to go to Ramakrishna Mission Gold Park. Swamiji, you know about it. Swami Lokesharananda used to there. I used to go with my mother. I was 7 years old, 8 years old, 10 years old, till I went to IIT. And at least 10 times a year, I was there in that auditorium, listening to various Swamijis, and we heard. But how come we are not being able to cultivate the spirit of Swamiji in the greater Indian population? What do we need to do differently? That's my question.
The answer is very obvious, because Swamiji was unique, and actually, really speaking, though it may look like it can be cultivated very easily, but it is not so easy. See, the liberation itself, the things needed, though they are very common actually, because you don't need any special devices, special appliances, or special nature also. But the thing is that it needs purity and sincerity. And as you know, that purity, unselfishness, and sincerity, though it may look like it is very common in this world, it is not at all common. And I think, especially, it is the crisis of Indians now, that we have become less and less empath. So our empathy has decreased, I think. So if our empathy has decreased, we are not so unselfish, then how can we become Swami Vivekananda in our present situation? So actually what you say, I think the real problem is our present society. So we have become like very selfish, and we have become like very materialistic. That is why we are in actually spiritual crisis.
I agree with you, and that's a challenge. And we have to do much more work, I feel. That's why Boston Pledge and the Academy of Leadership, we want to begin a movement for people to really understand that there's a path, which is a much more enlightened path. And fortunately, we have the knowledge how to get there. Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Santosh Mukherjee has raised.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks, Dr. Partho Ghosh, to organize this this outstanding uh, platforms for this Swami Vivekananda and Rishi Aurobindo. I'm from Newark, Newark, New Jersey. I'm ex-Narendra, so my question to the panelists, especially to our revered Swamiji, can anybody enlighten about the Swamiji's creations and contributions to the society, especially directly and indirectly, both at his lifetime and still now, what his creations and contributions are giving to the back to the society, especially the Ramakrishna missions, schools, colleges, universities, hospitals, and whatnot, all across the world. So I want Swamiji to speak something about this, because a lot of people doesn't know much about his creations and contributions directly and indirectly.
Very good point.
See, the biggest contribution, I think, of Swami Vivekananda or even our Rishi Aurobindo, it is actually Yuga Dharma Pravartan. That is, it is reigniting the path of spirituality. See, though we may think we have got a lot of Dharma gurus, but you understand by this lack of spirituality in the people, that you need again and again the avatars and the rishis to come to this world to reignite this the light of spirituality. So the biggest contribution of Swami Vivekananda, Sri Ramakrishna, Mahatma Buddha, Jesus Christ, all these people is to show the path of spirituality to the common people. That is why you see that our avatars like Mahatma Buddha, you look at their life. What are they doing? They are not too much interested in like social change or any social agenda, political agenda, economic agenda. Whole of their life is only spent in rejuvenating this spirituality in the society. So what they are doing, that by that you can understand that is the their real goal of their incarnation. See, in our computer science, it is like what is duck is what duck does. So actually, look at the what our Swami Vivekananda is doing and achieving his whole life, and that is his biggest contribution. So I think spirituality is his biggest contribution, and the medical institutions, and education institutions and relief service, it is actually secondary, because as Swamiji said that bhuke pet bhajan na hoege gopala. So we need our physical, we have physical needs, we have mental needs, we have little bit our psychological needs. But the thing is, other than that, we have also have spiritual needs. So we should have somewhat, we should satisfy our physical needs, somewhat we should satisfy our mental needs, somewhat we should satisfy our psychology. We cannot fully satisfy our these needs 100%. Somewhat we have to do that, and then we have to go to our spiritual path. And for that, whatever is needed, Swamiji has said nothing is like insignificant. You have to look at your abhyuday as well as your spiritual benefits. So both are needed. Your well-being in this world as well as well-being in the spiritual world. So well-being in the world is also needed, which we actually, it is a new thing, because centuries back we did not think much about it. So that is why Swami had to do it. Okay.
Thanks and pranams to you, Maharaj. Thank you.
We see another hand raised by Devduti Bokshi. Devduti, please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Okay.
can.
Okay. All right. First of all, thank you very much for this session. I never thought that this session will be so interesting and engaging. And practically, this is not a question because my question got stolen by Shantanu. I had a very similar question and got answered by Samiji and Parthoda. I just wanted to just share with you, in many cases in my personal life, I realized that I want to do something good and I waited for my circumstances to be ready, or probably I waited to get motivated by someone, or keep waiting for a external force or influence to trigger myself. And I tried to engineer myself by that and tried to accomplish this work. In many cases, probably I succeeded, but probably that didn't fulfill me. But in few cases, I realized that I get an inner spirit or inner thrust to uh, accomplish that job. In those cases, I realized that I stepped up and tried to change my circumstances rather than waiting the circumstances to be ready. This entire discussion gave me a lot of motivation, and showed probably the direction to a right path. Thanks everyone. Again, this is not a question, but this is a heartfelt thanks to everyone. This was very interesting and very motivating.
I have one little thing to ask, maybe for a future discussion, and that is, what would Swami Vivekananda and Maharishi think about this AI revolution, artificial intelligence? I am very confused. Sometimes I think it's ridiculous that we are losing touch with humans and we are giving everything to machines. But that is a long topic, and maybe Partho and me will design another talk in this respect. Thank you.
That would be wonderful. Obviously, the landscape changes, right? And AI is the new thing out there, and it's impacting all of us. What a great discussion it would be. I'm looking forward to that.
Yes.
In the meantime, we have Dr. Subrato Chakraborty waiting to ask a question. So, Mr. Chakraborty, can you please go ahead?
नमस्कार प्रभु जी। आज इतने सारे प्रभु जी हमारे सामने में। मैं एक किसान हूँ, मैं एक गरीब किसान हूँ, and I'm from a very remote part of India, from the borders of Sikkim and Kalimpong. तो आज की जो हमारी एक संसार है, मैं अकेले आदमी हूँ, पर हमारे एक संसार है जहाँ पर 1 मिलियन हमारे साथ में हमारे साथियों हैं, फार्मर्स, women self-help groups, unemployed youths, migrant laborers, और हम लोग सबको इकट्ठा मिलके एक बिजनेस करते हैं इन द फॉर्म ऑफ फार्मर प्रोड्यूसर ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस लिमिटेड। अभी सर जी, हमारे इंडिया में जो कहा जाता था, जो ये एक सोने का चिड़िया है, गोल्डन स्पैरो है थे, और हमारे स्वामी जी जिसके पास हर चीज की आंसर हैं, उनको जितना ही हम लोग पढ़ते हैं उतना ही हम लोग एनरिच्ड होते हैं। और क्या लकी हम हैं जो आज आप लोग उन्हीं के ऊपर बातें कर रहे हैं। तो उन्होंने जो हम लोग को सिखा के गए हैं जीने के लिए, जो दे लिव हु लिव फॉर अदर्स, নিজের জন্য তো সবাই বাঁচে, अपने लिए तो सब कोई जीते हैं, किंतु অপরের জন্য বাঁচার নামই জীবন। So we only follow that path, and luckily हमारे जीवन में एक परिवर्तन आ गया था। मैं अभी 77 साल का हूँ, पर मेरे जीवन में एक परिवर्तन आ गया था। 13th प्रेसिडेंट ऑफ रामकृष्ण मिशन एंड मॉठ रंगनाथन जी से मेरा मुलाकात हुआ था, और उनके पैर में हम पड़े हुए थे, और उनसे मैंने एनलाइटेंड हुए। आज की ये बातें जो हो रहा है, ये तो वंडरफुल। और मेनली पार्थो बाबू, आप इतने बड़े एक बिजनेस कंसल्टेंट हैं, इंडस्ट्रियल कंसल्टेंट हैं, हमारे इंडिया का उस इतने बड़े आप एक सम्मानीय व्यक्ति हैं। आपको आईआईटी में हम बहुत बार देखते हैं, बहुत सारे प्रोग्राम आपका बहुत गौर से सुनते हैं, और आपकी जो इन डेप्थ थॉट प्रोसेस है, उसके साथ एक कॉर्पोरेट मिक्सचर जो है, वो अभी नीड ऑफ द कंट्री, इंडिया नीड्स इट। हमारे 140 करोड़ जन आबादी में 100 करोड़ हमारे फार्मर्स हैं, हमारे वुमेन सेल्फ हेल्प ग्रुप्स हैं। इन लोगों के लिए आपका कोई एक सजेशन, आज नहीं, कोई एक स्पेशल प्रोग्राम में अगर आप देते तो इससे और अच्छा कुछ नहीं होता, हम लोग एनरिच्ड होते हैं। अगेन आप सब प्रभु जी को प्रणाम करके हम बात खत्म करते हैं। थैंक यू सर।
Namaste, thank you. We will, I'm touched, but আমাদের করতে হবে। এটা তো শেষ শুরু, কিন্তু শুরু থেকে পরে এগিয়ে যেতে হবে। You made a very important point. I want to touch on that. You know, we have to embed the spiritual vector in our life. Yeah, as Swamiji mentioned, to become like Vivekananda or Aurobindo may not be easy, it is hard, but there's nothing wrong in trying in wherever we are. We don't have to move away from our business, move away from our profession, but in that profession, whatever we do, I may be a doctor, I may be an engineer, I may be a consultant, but we should honor that profession in service, because every profession is at the end of the day is a service. There's some economic exchange takes place, which is also important. But doing the work, which I noticed in Japan, you know, one of the reasons Japan has done so well in the 50s and 60s and 70s, they practiced Vedic philosophy quite silently in their day-to-day business work life. If they're cleaning the floor, they honor the floor as if they're cleaning God. If they're cleaning a machine, they clean the machine with highest level of perfection. And Swamiji noticed that. And Swamiji was in Japan. His dream was that I hope every Indian would visit Japan one day to learn how industrious Japan is celebrating the principles of Vedic philosophy. So you're absolutely right. We don't have to separate the two. We have to merge the two. And in the process, seek self-satisfaction, seek self-realization, seek God. Because God, as again, Swamiji says,
Can everyone please put yourself on mute until I call your name? Mr. Shikdar, please go ahead, Partho.
Work, I'll close with one statement. Work is worship, place of work is temple. And if we can just follow that, and as Sumit was talking about, he has achieved that. And that's how I think we realize God. And ultimately, it is the connection with God which gives us the special power to do great things, if God permits us to do. Maybe God doesn't believe in me, that's fine. I have to keep trying. And that's what Vivekananda did. He kept on trying. That's what Aurobindo did. That's what Mahatma Gandhi did. That's what Netaji did. They kept on trying and trying and trying in whatever path they have chosen, in an honest way, with highest level of grit, with highest level of dedication to the service they're offering to that opportunity.
Thanks, Partho. And what you mentioned resonates with a lot of us, that no matter what we do, whatever our profession is, we must execute that with the missionaries. With that, I will ask Jayanto Dasgupta as our next person to ask the question.
Shantanu, may I add a point here, please?
Sure, go ahead.
So there were two very powerful.
As Jayanto Dasgupta, I pay my heartiest respect to all the dignitaries present here. From the very beginning, I was listening, but unfortunately, I am not in the room. Actually, I'm going to Howrah station to catch up the train. Anyhow, it was a nice evening I spent. I pay my respect to everybody, especially Shirish Maharaj. In my home, we started one spiritual organization called Behala Vivek Bharati Welfare Society. So in our house, from every Saturday, from Ramakrishna Mission Maharaj is coming, and even the series Maharaj, Sarvottama Maharaj ji, we got him one occasion. That was the Jubo conference.
Jayanto, you have put yourself on mute. Can you unmute yourself?
Well, that was Jayanto Dasgupta speaking. So I think we have lost him. Okay, so I was talking about 2 points. The first question that was asked was, we have
In the
Mr.
YouTube
Dasgupta.
also, I tried my best to join Mr. Tarun Goswami here, but unfortunately he was busy today this evening. Anyhow, in my one thing I just dragging from Dr. Ghosh discussion nowadays, why the good people are not coming? Just Netaji, Subhash Chandra Bose, Rishi Aurobindo, something like that. This type of question once we just placed in front of Swamiji in our organization, he just simply told that you just listen one thing: the big planes, say C-17, they cannot come down here, any airport. For that one, big airport is required, a special airport is required. So to bring such a talented person like Swamiji and Aurobindo, Netaji, etc., the good mother is required. Once the mother will not be such a pious, such a learned, or so that child will not come in the art. The Swamiji shortly has narrated all these things. Nowadays it is a dirt. I am not telling that nowadays the ladies are bad, ladies are not pious, not good. But the thing is this: if we just analyze the mother of our big persons, everybody was very pious, very respected in every their daily life. Everything was to be learned for everybody. So my thing is this: if we can make on some school or some things where does good ladies or good women can come. Otherwise, good mother is required. Good mother is required. Otherwise, not good person will come in the society. So that day, Swamiji just described this one. Now, I just request Swamiji, Siris Maharajji, in this respect, what is his view?
Thank you very much, Mr. Dasgupta, for that question. May I request Swamiji to answer this?
What is the question?
Question was, he believes that Swamiji or Aurobindo or Netaji became great because they had great mothers. And what could we do to cultivate young ladies in our country so they can become great mothers? And in the process, we can stimulate more greatness in a wider audience. That's what I think that was the question.
If that was the question, though the question was very long, so I lost myself in the question. So I am sorry. But what you say is actually correct. But Swamiji's way was for the society, to how to change the society. It was through education. So you will, how we notice that is, we don't notice that directly. But after his Bharat Parikrama, after he visited Kanyakumari, his tone had changed. Earlier, he used to go to the kings, and his approach was kind of a top-down approach. Like he wanted that if the kings are changed, then the society will also be changed. But after his visit to Kanyakumari, when he saw the future glory of India, and he also saw the solution, how it can be attained, though he did not write it, but we guess, it is our assumption, just by looking at his letters, his behavior, that it was actually education. So after that, he used to say that, "Am I a woman that you talk about the women's problem to me?" Give them education and they will solve their own problems. Am I a widow that you are asking me a problem of widows? You give them education and they will solve their own problem. So that is why you will see that he put so much effort in Sister Nivedita and in her project of teaching girls in Calcutta. So his solution for the society, for the women, for poor, for the lower caste people, for everyone, it is give them education and they will understand their own problems and they will solve their own problems. At least when the problems are related to this world, because spirituality, you need to have some kind of inspiration. I know that. But the problem of this world can be solved by proper education. And I think education, and I am in an educational institute, I sincerely believe that the glory of India that he saw in future will come to India through education. Once we have, but definitely his idea of education was man making character building education. It was not the normal kind of education like career building, the school, college, university education, and memorizing, rotting, you rot the whole knowledge, all the facts in your brain. That kind of education he did not want. But I think the solution is like proper education of the masses. So I am just I know that I am simplifying things because the problems are not easy. So the solutions are also not easy. But I think the education will play a very important role in finding solution to not just the problem of India, but the problem of whole world. Whole world also is not a very nice place to live in at present. There are also so much sectarian violence and different types of problems are there. Inequalities are there, unemployment there, racial problems are there. So the world is right now is not a very happy place to live. So I think for whole world, like man making character building education is needed.
Thank you. I'm just doing a time check. I think we
Right.
only have a few minutes left. So Devender had a point. Devender, please go ahead, and then we'll see if we have.
Thank you, Shantanu. Thank you. So there was a question asked that why India is no more a सोने की चिड़िया. So ये question हिंदी में पूछा गया था कि भारत सोने की चिड़िया थी. So whenever I visit the remotest part of the country for Project Glory of Bharat or Values Integral Series, I answer this question that Bharat सोने की चिड़िया थी क्योंकि गांव विकसित थे. So we need to have the decentralized model in place. We need to capitalize on the strength of the villages of the country. The nature has gifted this beautiful land with bounties. We need to work and be in sync with nature so that we could create value for everybody and in the process create opportunities for the youngsters to make our lives meaningful. The second point that was asked is what could we do? So I often ask this question to myself, जब ये देश हमारा है तो देश की समस्याएं किसकी है? The challenges of the country also belongs to me. I'm talking about myself. I'm one of the 1.4 billion children of Mother India. I don't know about my other siblings, my other brothers and sisters, but I will serve my motherland till the last breath of my life. So this is the level of emotional investment that I think the youngsters need to put in to serve people, planet, cultures, and economy. When we would serve, we would make our lives meaningful and we will make shaheedon ke sapnon ka Bharat. So the martyrs of this great land, they dreamt of a Bharat. And for the glory of Bharat, each one of us has to invest not just time and intellectual capital that we are blessed with, but a lot of emotions. Thank you very much.
Jai Bharat. Jai Bharat.
Jai Bharat.
Thank you, Devendra ji, very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to ask a very short question. So I know in Veda, there are two kind of teaching. One is related to knowledge or jnana, and another is another teaching is related to activity or karma kanda. So this question to Swamiji. So I'd like to know what kind of role Sri Ramakrishna Mission is playing for karma kanda, which should evolve over the time. So is Ramakrishna Mission is in pace with the basically the social order and activity that which should evolve over the time.
So shall I start? Is there more to the question?
Yeah, that is all.
That's all. No? So first of all, it is not karma kand, it is karma yoga. And second thing is this karma yoga, though it is mentioned in our Bhagavad Gita, but I think that Swami Vivekananda was the first person who popularized this method amongst Hindus, because it was there in, for example, Buddhism, Christianity, or even Sikhism also, because Sikhism Kar Seva is there. They do a splendid karma yoga there, though they don't call it karma yoga, but Kar Seva is nothing but karma yoga of Hinduism. So this karma yoga, I think Swami Vivekananda was the first person who popularized among the Hindus of India. And that is why this is a special method that we always stick to, even though the other denominations or other sanghas, they say that this no, there is nashkarma siddhi or akarma is taught in Upanishad, but we always say that karma yoga, by through karma yoga and only karma yoga. We don't believe that first you have to karma, then you have got chitta shuddhi, then you have to practice something else spatially, and then you attain. In fact, we say the harmony of paths is that you can attain liberation through different paths. Swamiji said that you not just different paths, you can mix them. Like for example, you can mix jnana and bhakti, and jnana, bhakti, karma, rajyog, bhakti yog. So that means what this implies is very significantly that there is no eligibility, no adhikari vad. It is just a ruchi vad. If you are, for example, you are doing a mixture of jnana and bhakti, you cannot say that he is eligible adhikari of jnana and he is not anadhikari of bhakti, or you can say that adhikari of bhakti is who is not anadhikari of jnana, because he is doing both jnana and bhakti. Definitely he is adhikari of both, or jnana and karma is definitely adhikari of everything. So we don't believe in adhikarivad, we believe in ruchivad. You are doing bhakti, it is not because you are anadhikari of jnana, but because you like. You are doing jnana because you like jnana. You are doing karma because you like karma. So you can attain the your final goal by any path. And karma yoga is especially important because you see that Indians, they are very weak in karma yoga. They don't want to work. See, it's not just a problem in this century or the earlier, this millennium or the earlier millennium. It was there even in Mahabharata times. Just by the discourse of Sri Krishna Arjun, you can understand. This Arjun, he is telling again and again, Sri Krishna is telling Arjun that you should go to this war. Your brother, he has asked for this war, depending on you. And how can you come to this thinking, yes, I have got choices. I have got choice not to go to war and go to become a monk, not do work. See, this is the problem of Indians. So even if we are told to do work, we always try to find a shortcut. That is why this Karma Yoga Swami said, because this is our weakness, we have to pay special attention to this, that we don't become like very selfish, don't worry about this world. See, why we don't want to do Karma Yoga? Because you see, we are a little bit selfish. We don't want to help others. We have to be very frank about it. So that is why this becomes a chain in us. And whatever sadhana we do, whatever meditation we do, it is unsuccessful. So why do we find so much failures in? A lot of people do meditation, a lot of people do japa, but there are a lot of failures because you see they don't try to have this your mental change that is very much necessary for this liberation. They don't want this karma. They don't try for this unselfishness. They don't try for this karma. So I think that this karma yoga, your question, this karma yoga is very important in our Ramakrishna mission because I think it was Swami Vivekananda who brought this in forefront. So it becomes a duty of Ramakrishna mission somewhat to popularize this path. And whatever we say, we always say that yes, Karma Yoga is true and you can get liberation through Karma Yoga, and this should be done.
Thank you very much. I know we are almost out of time. This has been a very engaged audience. Thank you for all the questions, and I'm sure there are many more that you have in your mind. Maybe we'll have a follow-up session after that, but before we finish, may I ask Mr. Ghosh to quickly summarize today's main points for all of us to take that back.
Well, thank you, Shantanu. It was indeed a very rich discussion. Not only the panelists who spoke about different aspects of the two giants, but also the questions that were raised by the various people in the audience. It is never enough. I know we could go on for another 8 hours, but the two key points I take away, and I think all of you agree. The first one, civilization is at a point of inflection. It is at a point of crisis. The point I made, Swamiji also made, all of us realize it is in a crisis. And as much Swamiji and Sri Aurobindo also realized the crisis. The crisis is here, crisis is real, it has become more intense. Point one. Point two, we all agree that Indian philosophical ethos, the Vedas, the Upanishads, as exhibited through the works of Sri Aurobindo, as well as Swamiji and others, need to come to the forefront to rescue us from the black hole we could get into. And that could only happen, as Swamiji right now summarized, if we can give expression to our ancient philosophy that we are proud of through Karma Yoga. And that's the point I was trying to make. Then what does it mean for us, the 10 points that I laid out? And if we can practice those 10 points in the spirit of Karma Yoga, in spirit of service, then only we could be proud of the ancient philosophical strings of knowledge that all of us talked about and Professor Joy Sen laid out beautifully. So with that, I like to see that we continue this dialogue and convert the dialogue into action. We have examples of that. I mean, Swamiji himself is an example. All of us are in action. Mr. Marik is an example. Dr. Datta, you are an example. I know you run an educational institute. Dr. Joy Sen is running an educational institute. So I think we have to keep doing it. But Swamiji is so right. I must say, if I have to stand back and have lived in 30 countries and think of the countries which have done well, Japan, Korea, China, Germany, United States, the common denominator, these are action-oriented countries. They work hard. And Swamiji is so right that there's a general lethargy, which is very evident in our country. So the challenge is how to use the power of our philosophical ethos to neutralize the lethargy or eliminate the lethargy, to create a country which is action-oriented, a country which smiles, a country which serves, country which is not angry, country which is inclusive, country can integrate multiple thoughts towards service of humanity. Jibe Prem Kore Jai Jon, Shei Jon Shevisheshwar, that was Vivekananda's statement. So was Aurobindo's statement that the life divine earned the divinity of life through action. So with that, I'd like to thank you very much for a wonderful time. I can go on and on listening to all of you. It is a very, very educative. And I think we'll continue to answer, what does AI mean? And I personally feel, by the way, short answer is Swamiji and Aurobindoji would both welcome AI because it frees up your left brain a little bit and activates your right brain, which is spiritual brain, the creative brain. But we will discuss separately. Thank you very much.